damage heroes. So we will see what ASN have in game.
Well, definitely. I mean, with the Lyra picked up, even if the side of Brenchong do respond with that of Grace, Lyra is just so much stronger in the early game all the way to level 8. The team-wide burst kill that Lyra can provide, and of course the speed boost, and Bright Bulwark has got such immense utility on the foes right now. We do see Brenchong picking up that Baron, the very meta very meta weapon carry at this point in time. We've seen a lot that, you know, when they go up against a Baron, they do normally would pick up that Ringo just so they can outburst the Baron, and not even outburst, out-sustain the damage coming out from Baron just by matching stats for stat. So they are, the side of ASN will ban out that Sky, and of course Brenchong did ban out that Taka as well.
And this is the really interesting part where I wanted to put out there, where Brenchong actually banned out the Idris. I was wondering why they did ban out the Idris, but this now makes perfect sense when they picked up the Baron, because the biggest weakness of Baron is that dive, that immediate dive from a carry, which is Idris does that dive the best. So picking up that Baron after Idris ban is really a smart idea.
Well, yeah, definitely. I must agree with you. And Idris, if there is no Baron on foe, I mean, Idris at this point in time is one of the strongest, if not the strongest carry at this point in time. In patch 2.6 as well. I mean, you can play Idris into that of Baron, and you'll definitely win him in a late game. And of course Sky as well. Idris is just so mobile, and his kit just allows for so much outplays. For the side of ASN Esports, they are going to respond with that Celeste pickup with an Adagio of theirs, probably going for weapon. What do you think?
There's a lot of ways over here. I would feel that Grumjaw is still open here because they went for the crew, right? So this makes perfect sense. They immediately just rushed into Brenchong's composition with that crew tanking up front, and they have a double heal to sustain everything that Brenchong throws over here. So they have a pretty solid position to actually take out Brenchong. But Brenchong has to really think on what roamer fits perfectly in this time, and I would guess an Arden or a Grace will be alright here, because they really need that tanky frontliner person or that shield or heal from any of their roamers to sustain that dive comp from Team ASN.
I think personally, I was about to say before Brenchong did pick the Grace up, that Grace would be the optimum pickup at this point in time, because Grace can be the frontliner, like you said, and you know, with Grace's kit at level 12, at level 11, when she has her out all maxed out, at level 12, or was it 11? When she has them out all maxed out, then, you know, she can put out a lot of burst, especially with an with a echo pickup as well. So I like the draft coming out from the side of Brenchong, but then really it's down to execution for the side of ASN, whether or not ASN can push their early game. I mean, a lot of crews now, they settle for the tension bow, they settle for that poison shift in the early game, and especially with the tension bow, your DMR will be doing a lot of damage, and you can hold the sustain up against a Celeste anyways, as long as you do block out all the core collapses, and of course Holy Nova from Grace as well. So I think that the comp coming out from the side of ASN is rather solid, but honestly there is just so much more firepower coming out from the side of Brenchong. What do you think? What do you personally think? If you are going to put your money on a team, which team would you put your money on based on comps?
I really put on Team ASN because they know the game plan. They drafted accordingly to what Brenchong picked, whereas Brenchong, all they have to do is just play really cautious and not get caught up. But the problem is when you play in this back line, at this back pedal, you tend to be more passive, and that allows Team ASN to be more aggressive and to take more control over the entire game. But if Brenchong really understand what they have to do, they can definitely take the game at the late game. But Team ASN, as aggressive as they ever been, I guess I'll put my money on them.
Well, yeah, I mean, ASN coming into this match, I must agree with you. Brenchong, although they have the later game comp, right? They have the late game comp, they have the Baron, they have the Celeste, they have really good siege potential, but then you have to wait till Baron gets that Sorrow Blade, that Tension Bow before he can put out enough damage per se. Whereas Adagio is such a good early game pusher as well. I mean, with the Gift of Fire and of course the passive on it, the burn on it, you can kind of poke Baron out of lane, and that way you can deprive Baron out of farm as well. And of course, the poke coming out from the side of ASN will be immense with that Lyra being in lane. And of course, like you said earlier on, there is a double sustain coming out for the side of ASN as compared to the side of Brenchong. Brenchong is only counting on that Grace for a lot of the initiation and of course the sustain from Divine Intervention when she hits level 6. So anyways, we are jumping into the fold right now. Thank you, Rubber Monkey, for your insights. So casting alongside me for the game, we have, again, I request a duo. Welcome back, buddy.
Hello. And yes, it is, well, I would say good to be back, even though I only missed out on the drop. But definitely great insight coming out from Rubber Monkey there. Probably more that it is more something, that you as a more analytical caster and obviously Rubber Monkey as a Roma player have a lot more insight into. I mean, I can go as far as predictions of what I think I'm going to pick and how I think the team comps are going to work out in that way, but it's really good to sit along and listen to. So, but yeah, with that, I'm kind of agreeing with him there that ASN do have a good team comp built up for them. They're really focused around this crew. They know what they want. Whereas if the side of Brenchong get caught out, it's a bit of a problem there. I mean, they had the Baron and the Celeste to a late game, but if ASN are able to play this one well enough and manage to take some control into the transition of the mid game, I think they'll have it. And going into the late game, it might be all right. You've always got to worry about how well can this crew get built up. You do have Adagio there, and we saw Adagio being played yesterday to great effect, so, can't count him out either.
Well, yeah, I mean, but yesterday we did see a weapon Adagio. I think Aeon this time would be going for the crystal one. He has picked up a Swifty and of course an armor. We do see Tazaboy. Yesterday he played this Lyra as well. There are a few times when he placed himself in, positions that jeopardized his health and his longevity, like the one now. And he plays really aggressive as well. I kind of like the play style. If he plays this aggressive, I personally would prefer if Tazaboy did pick up that Grace, because Grace, you kind of can play aggressive with the 40% damage reduction, and we do see Tazaboy going very, very low at this point in time, but nothing much will be happening. The side of Brenchong probably afraid that, crew will be in the brush after all. But then again, we cannot discount the fact that they have double sustain coming out from the side of ASN. They have the Adagio, although Adagio's heal do scale with health, but then we do see right now just the amount of sustain Adagio has going up against this Grace and Baron in lane. I did ask Rubber Monkey earlier on if, he can put his money on a team. Which team would he go for? And he said ASN, and then you agree with him as well. But then are we really just going to shrug off the fact that Brenchong has got so much firepower in the end game, and they have only one single target hero, which is Crew. Crew can stick to one target. If he has to switch, then the opponent carry can just burst the Crew down on the sideline. So what do you think? Do you think it still work, the team comp coming up from the side of ASN? Coming into the late game, of course.
Is going to go onto how effective this crew can be, and we already see them jumping onto Sin C1 now. They do get core collapsed out, however, but Tezaboy very quick on the rotation to get down. You see Majin now jumping in, goes in with the knock-up, might actually catch out Chingy in this one. And in that situation, you see that crew wasn't able to get out alive. I think if ASN are able to find those single picks that they need, then they can be successful, and of course they'll have quite a bit of lane dominance with the sustain they have, being able to push Baron back. And I guess that's really going to help Adagio well, especially going up against Baron. And we talked about the other day in situations that you really need to match this Baron kind of item for item and not go too heavy on the defense yourself, because you need to be putting out similar amounts of offensive pressure. So, you know, I would like to say ASN at first look, just because of the sustain comp they've got built up, but you are right in saying that we can't really shrug off what we've seen being so successful yesterday. We saw this Baron Celeste comp, and it just puts out so much siege potential and so much damage when we get towards even the mid game, I'd say.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, all Baron has really to do is just go for that Sorrow Blade, go for that Tension Bow, and the amount of damage coming out from Baron would be insane. But Mr. Jim right now is probably opting for that Serpent's Mask build that Spaghetti used to build. Like, we did see Spaghetti on this Baron before, and I think, if I'm not wrong, if memory do not fail me, Spaghetti actually opted for that Serpent's Mask for the extra sustain. And you were talking about this early on yesterday as well, when we did see the first Baron, and then he opted for the early defense. And you kind of say that had the Baron went for Serpent's Mask just to increase the damage output and of course the extra sustain, it will be so much better. What do you think of Mr. Jim going for that Serpent's Mask, a possible Serpent's Mask as first item?
Well, so far I'm looking at that Book of Eulogies and thinking it is more the general sustain item that most laners get as a first pickup or moving even out of base. So I'm not sure whether he will go for the Serpent's Mask pickup, but if he does, then I don't think he needs the Aegis as much. It is a different situation, and we're looking at a different team compare. Of course, you've got the Verse of Judgment to block, you've got the from Howl's Heart, you need to block the stun on that, and you could say to get out of... I'm not sure. If you use it in Bright Bulwark, do you know if you're able to jump out of that, or is your movement still impaired there? Because the problem we did see, and we saw it before, that Lyra is a good counter to go against that Baron when you're playing it offensively, and you move yourself into positions where you're able to use for Bright Bulwark on top of the Baron and open up these opportunities for your team to dive on them. So I'd like to see more of that in the late game, but we see Chingy going in with a From Howl's Heart. It does land onto Majin, but there's no real follow-up there. Mr. Jim looking for some trade-off damage, but just going to go for minions for now. And you can see the pressure that I was talking about that ASN is able to apply. The minions always being pushed up into Brenchong's turrets at the moment. And I'm wondering, you know, at the moment it looks like they should be able to get the first turret here on the side of ASN because Baron is always rotating down. But you can see that Grace able to hold it for now, but Aeon already putting out a fair amount of damage.
Well, yeah, I mean, Aeon, although I would prefer it if the side of ASN do pick out, and like we see now, you were asking earlier on if Baron can jump jet out of that of the Bright Bulwark, and we did see earlier on Bright Bulwark, if Baron is already...
Well, Chingy is going to dive onto Celeste, finds the kill, moving on to Mr. Jim, who did use the jump jets and is able to get out there. And that's going to be so important for Mr. Jim. And I understand the need for maybe the shield because you're going up against the Adagio in lane. So he might just sell it later on. We did see defense being brought previously in other matches and then being sold later. Oh, I think the Bright Bulwark just connected enough so they can pick up a kill. Chingy is going low, but should be able to just get out of that one. And that's another kill. And it's good to see that ASM putting this Krill to use. And you talked about it is their main source of damage. And then it is more of a support kind of sustained team comp coming out of the rest of ASM with the Lyra and Adagio, which could be argued to be a bit more of a older kind of team combat. We definitely saw a lot more before of teams always wanting to pick up both these sustained heroes, but not so much anymore in the current meta, I'd say.
Well, there is one thing that's for sure. Generally, when you see double sustain, double healing comp, your next thought process would be going for a hero that can output Mortal Wound. Problem with Baron is that you can't quite pick out that of, say, Poison Shift, to aid the Mortal Wound stack, and of course, Sync 1 has already picked up that Celeste. So they know for sure the side of ASN that I'm talking about. They know for sure that nothing can quite stop them because none of the heroes on the side of Brenchong.
Well, for a second as Chingy goes in again, doing massive damage with that tension bow and an early infusion as well. We actually see, I thought it's 2 infusions, but just Aeon's gift of fire there, I suppose. But obviously Chingy there with a level 8 infusion at this point, and they are really trying to utilize this early game, which they know they need to do as they go in with a massive arcane passage and manage to find the target onto Baron. But there's going to be Solar Storm's Tezza Boy getting very low, needs to be careful. Margin probably looking for the jump onto them. There's going to be Imperial Sigil to keep them alive for a second longer. Chingy going to work on that turret with the help of Aeon. They managed to get it. I think very brave, and you mentioned this before, Tezza Boy putting themselves out there for the team. It really gave them the numbers advantage in that situation when attacking that turret, and just gave them kind of that confidence to push through with it, and then moving on to their next objective here, the gold miner. ASN so far playing this one very well. And, you know, it's great to see that they're able to make this team comp work out for them, because if they were to slip up in this early game, and we might still see it happen, we might see a comeback from Brenchong, because we are on the late game heroes with Baron and Celeste. However, this is what they needed when playing into that.
Well, yeah, I mean, whenever you have a crew on your team, you would try to play to your early game because you know Sync 1 in the early game not as strong, and of course the only power spike that Celeste really just get when she hits a level 8 is the zoning properties and the ability to outzone a lot of other heroes because of increased range on Heliogenesis. But then if you do take the fight close range right up in her face, then even then the Heliogenesis power spike, the overdrive on Heliogenesis wouldn't quite matter anyways, because you know you are in the face, you really don't need that range.
Arcane Passage going in, followed up by the From House Art coming out from Chingy, is able to pick up a kill, but it's going to fall to the Solar Storm. Nice cleanup by Cincy 1, and now they do have that range that you talked about, and it's going to help them in this situation probably more so. I think Celeste needs to be using those Heliogenesis for vision to know when Cruel is around, but it's just so dangerous when Tezza Boy on that Lyra has the Arcane Passage up and they're able to jump in like that. So far you can see the communication on the side of ASN and the synergy they have when going into these team fights. It's working out so far. Unlucky that Chingy got caught out there by the Solar Storm. Great reactions, however, from Cincy 1 to pick it up.
Well, yeah, I mean, we do see Chingy has already completed that Tension Bow and, of course, Poison Shift. And on top of that, probably going for more defenses. I think at this point in time, when you have the damage, when you have the early game, why not just try and go for that Bone Saw, just to output a little more armor shredding, just to output a little more damage as... you know, because as a crew, you just want to really just stick to one hero anyways. So that way, when you have that Bone Saw, it's kind of, it does work to your kit because of your weakness stacks as well. So that way, I think Bone Saw is one of those items when it's on crew or say on Saw, it's a so much better item as compared to the other weapon carries when, like say Vox. Like we usually see Vox building up that Tension Bow and not the Bone Saw, and the only reason is because he has to go around, he has to move around, he has to be very mobile as a hero. He can't quite afford to just stick attack 8 times on one single target. He will just have to attack whoever that's in front, if not then the second to the front. Anyways, we do see Brenchong just starting to turtle up, and although I do not agree with their playstyle at this point in time, I mean Brenchong, they have all the damage items, but there is one thing that we must note coming up from Mr. Jim is that he kind of had forsaken on the early Tension Bow and went for that Tyrant's Monocle as a second item pickup. He has just picked up the Tension Bow. With now, I think he'll have more damage coming into the fights. But then, even then, they shouldn't be turtling up so much because Cruel only has got double attack items, double weapon items. They can try to force a fight, and of course with Majin in the front line as this Lyra, I think they have a much stronger engage as compared to the side of ASN. But then turtling up and then disengaging, just running away and not trying to trade out damage, it is what that's gonna fall, or rather make Brenchong fall, their team comp fall apart.
And previously, you would have noticed Chingy actually taking the gold mine solo. If Celeste had rotated into their own jungle to this middle tree amp before, but then they just rotated back around to their team. And I know it's going for that kind of safety and sticking as a team, but if they had just checked the bush and maybe ventured a bit further into the mid jungle, they would have been able to see that gold mine was being taken and could have contested it. But at this point, you just see ASN slowly gaining their lead just a bit more and more. They're at the moment 5-2 kills, and they have 30.3k gold over 27.7. It's not too much of a lead, but you can really see that ASN have control of the match so far. And this could be a strategy on the side of Brenchong to want to hold out and get those items. But while they're holding out, ASN is also doing the same. And we now see Chingy going in with the from house high. He's going to block out the knock-up coming out from Grace and managed to find the kill onto Baron. There's going to be Solar Storm coming out, hits Tezza Boy, but Aeon is still deep in there, trying to go for Cincy 1, but needs to be careful. Has got themselves in quiet position here, and there's going to be the core collapse just missing. Tezza Boy with them, with the Imperial Sigil to keep them alive for now. Meanwhile, it's Cruel working on this turret, and they managed to find it. That's just going to increase their lead that much more. They're now 6-2, and that gold lead going up to almost 5k. Seeing around 4k at this point, 32.9 over to the 29k that they have.
I mean, it is not wrong for playing passive when in the back lines. Problem with that is that you have so much more firepower, and you can't quite afford to just play passive, especially with a Celeste, because you must know how to use your kit. Yeah, for Celeste's kit, you want to zone, you want to poke. You cannot wait for an engage to befall you before you start putting out damage, because that is when it's all gone wrong. One more thing about Mr. Jim. Mr. Jim built a very early Aegis. Problem with building that is that if you are going to go defense, then you are going to jeopardize on the amount of damage you can toss out on your enemies. And that would be bad because honestly, Aeon, as an Adagio, we all know Adagio kind of falls out late game, especially that of Crystal Adagio and even some weapon Adagio. They fall out really late in the game, and as for Barret, you just get stronger as the game gets longer. Problem with that is that if you are going to settle for that early Aegis, then you will not be able to burst down Aeon at all in the early game, and I think that is where the side of Brenchong actually did fall, and because of the early defense coming out from Mr. Jim on this Baron.
You talked about Baron, or more so Celeste, I should say. You don't want to be getting jumped on. You don't want the fight happening to you. You want to be the team engaging with the fight. You want to be able to have that safety of being in the back line while your team is tanking up in the front line and dealing out the damage, and you want to just be doing the zoning out there. And we're going to see the from house as Gray engaged once again. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Arcane Passage onto Baron to try secure it, but this time Baron wasn't the target. He wasn't the first target, and Celeste is able to survive through that, whether it's through the Eve and all the healing coming out from Majin there. You can see Fountain was used, and now we're going to be chasing down the side of ASN. So you can see there the engage was just led by Chingy. Where the side of ASN have been working well so far is when they've been engaging, they were engaging completely as a team. There it was a little bit less coordinated by the looks of it, and Brenchong were able to pick up on that and turn that fire around. Very well played, and they're gonna get the Kraken for it, which should be able to push them back at least 1 or 2 turrets into this game. And the gold lead's starting to even out a bit more as they're catching up.
Well, yeah, and this is the problem you see. A lot of times, a lot of teams just want to wait for the engage to come to them, but then for the side of Brenchong, you can't quite afford that, can you? Because all your heroes, you really just want to be in their faces, just bursting them down as fast as possible. You don't have the damage per second, you have the damage per hit. What you have is not that of, say, like as compared to ASN's comp. ASN's comps, they have the sustain, they have the hit by hit kind of damage, whereas for you, it's the shot in the shortest amount of time, you output the most amount of damage.
This is what they needed. Chingy moving their way onto Baron. Baron is going to jump jets away from there. Does get healed up by the Grace, and Grace going to try and slow down Chingy, but it's not going to last them very long. And this is the thing. you just see Chingy clean that one up as soon as they turned around. I think it was also a part of mistargeting previously. As long as they're jumping on this Baron, they don't exactly have the peel to deal with it. Crucible is going to cut through the core collapse, the knock-up, and then Chingy is just going to keep on moving through. And you can see even like on the side of ASN, they all have that reflex block there. And I think it is for good measure. There's a lot of CC coming out, but if you get through that, there really isn't too much to peel off Chingy from that Baron. The jump jets you saw him use, but Chingy was just able to catch up to that. And that's why this crew is just working so well against Baron, when we've seen Baron being able to be played to be such a powerhouse. And don't get me wrong, he still has that damage there. It might not be as much because you did mention the Aegis on the side of Mr. Jim, but it's definitely still there, as we saw previously when they had a bit of a misengage.
Well, yeah, and there is one thing about Xingguan in that fight that scored the side of ASN, that Ace was Xingguan's positioning. As a Celeste, like I said before, you want to zone, you want to poke. You cannot quite be in the center, in the middle of the fight. And that was where Xingguan was. And that was really bad. It just spelled doom for him, because first, you cannot out-duel Chingy or even Aeon. What you can do, though, you can outburst them. Problem with that is that if your Baron does go down when you try to outburst them, then you can't quite stay in a 1v1 anymore. And that really just is the flaw for the side of Brenchong. That is their flaw. They cannot stay in a 1v1 because they lack the sustain, firstly. And although they can put out a lot of damage in a short amount of time, but afterwards they are kind of just sitting ducks. If you do understand what I'm trying to say, if, like, say, Baron jump jets in, put out three rockets, or even 4 rockets per se, and then afterwards they are just sitting ducks. They have to wait for jump jets to come in, because Baron's basic attack is just slow as hell. So there is no reason for you to be in the center of the fight as Xingguan, as a Celeste at least. You need to be at a range, you need to be at a maximum effective range of your heliogenesis. You must know how to zone them out. You must know to keep them out from engaging. And once they get really low, you can have Mr. Jim on this Baron jump in, take them down immediately. And of course, Majin can be the first to engage. Go in with the Benediction, and then afterwards followed by the Holy Nova. That way you can burn all of their reflex blocks, especially for Chingy. If not, then at least Majin on this Grey should stick to the Baron, because all we are saying right now is that Chingy is just going on to Mr. Jim on this Baron, trying to take him down as fast as possible. And then, of course, if Majin is there to peel for them, then Chingy can't quite do anything anymore.
It looks like ASN have made the decision to go in, and there's a massive from House Heart going off into Cincy one, but not the right target. You're leaving this Baron alone to have free reign. If they manage to find the kill finally, and they still have the man advantage, there's going to be the Imperial Sigil to keep Chingy alive, but it's going to be Adagio falling, and it's going to be a bit messy, but they should be able to pick up the ace here, as Chingy is going to follow down, get the double kill, and the ace. And this is the thing, I understand that you can't always get to that Baron, so in that sense that was alright to go on Celeste, but you could see the sustain Celeste had in that, and Baron had a bit of a chance. Maybe if Baron had more damage, that fight could have definitely gone in favor of Brenchong. But also going back to your prior point on the jump jet usage, we talked about this the other day, and jump jets really should be used in an engaging team comp. Of course, you're going to use them to get out every now and then, and you will use them to block abilities once you've got the overdrive on it, but it's at a point where there's so many heroes that can just stick to you that, oh my, no, the Solar Storm coming in. It's not going to steal the Kraken, however. I wonder if Chingy had stayed there and continued attacking, if it would have. Maybe Chingy saw the Celeste ult coming and knew to step away. But
yeah, probably.
It's going to be the Kraken going over to the side of ASM. They're 12-5 and about 4k gold ahead with the 8k over to 43.9 on the side of Brenchong. So they have a good lead, and they should be able to push it through and maybe finish out. But you got to remember the siege potential that the side of Brenchong has, the power, the damage they're able to put out between the Baron and Celeste is still pretty heavy, and especially in a tight choke like this going into the base, it might be tough.
Well, yeah, I mean, the side of ASN, the only thing they lack is the ability to siege. Oh, they are going in for a team fight right now.
Going in with the Arcane Passage, followed up by the Bright Bulwark. There's going to be the Solar Storm in response. Martian going in, doesn't find the knockup. Chingy has already moved on to the Celeste, which we talked about targeting here, and I do believe Mr. Jim were being the bear target. He does fall in the process, but Aeon and Tesboy managed to find their way out there. And this could get dangerous for ASN. They're giving Brenchong more room to breathe. They're not shying this game out. We're reaching 23 minutes. Soon going to be the 25-minute mark. And that's really, like, right now we're getting to the late game here where they're getting their full item builds. And, you know, Baron and Celeste should be hitting these power spikes.
I mean, Baron and Celeste would have the power spikes at this point in time. And even more so once Sync 1 does get that either Echo, which I don't think it's likely.
I believe it's going to be the Halcyon charges. It's why I like to run at least, Tetsuboy having to use the Crucible to block out that one, but maybe a good idea. You don't want to get caught here, which Brenchong know, because they are using the boots to chase them down, and they are looking for the kills. They might find Aeon. There's the portal. They're going to be able to get through. Solar Storm's going to follow up, but it's not going to be able to do the damage. You can see Brenchong really hungry for kills at the moment, and they know if they get that man advantage into the next team fight, they could be able to push this game out and win, because either way, Brenchong are still going to have a tough fight against ASN with the upcoming team fight.
Yeah.
However, you know, they have reached some kind of power spike with these full item builds to say. You can see Celeste, maybe not completely there, is working on a bit of weapon defense against that Cruel, but I would like to see Cruel jump onto this Baron. I'd like to see Tesserboy on this Lyra use Arcane Passage in with the Bright Bulwark, Echo and Bright Bulwark again, just really lock them down. But we'll have to see how it plays out. A lot of good vision being placed out by both teams. You can see, especially on the side of Brenchong, Martian's done a great job with the scout trap coverage for the whole map.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, for Sync 1, I'll prefer if Sync 1 does go for that clockwork, just for shorter cooldowns on Solar Storm and even the Core Collapse. That way, when you have the clockwork, and of course the crystal amplification, we can't quite forget that as well. With all your items you have, on top of that, a clockwork, you are going to be putting out a lot of damage, a lot of consistent burst. And that is really what you need going up against Chingy on this Cruel, because Cruel generally cannot take a lot of burst. And with a weakness stacks on you, you are going to lose 40% of your overall damage. Yeah, so if you have the clockwork to amplify your damage by say 30%, then of course it is gonna kind of nullify Cruel's damage reduction, the weakness stacks. But even then, it is really just down to how you are going to use your clockwork and how you are going to use your core collapses and solar and helogenesis, whether or not zone or just to poke. And there is one thing that I realized from Majin is that he actually did pick up that echo just for the double healing. The problem with that is that there is one thing. I mean, you picking up that echo, you overdrive that Holy Nova. It is a good thing. Problem is that we did see a lot of times when Majin kind of missed a lot of the Holy Novas, a lot of crucial ones at least, whether or not to burn out Crucibles, whether or not to burn out Reflex blocks from the side of ASN, but then all of these Holy Novas have to start heating, else the side of Brenchong will have a hard time. They are now posturing for an engage right now. They are going to be flanked by the side of ASN Esports.
And we see Lyra going in once again with the Arcane Passage, followed up by the Bright Bulwark, but gets instantly mounted down by this Baron, who's doing massive damage at this point. There's going to be the Fountain on the side of Brenchong to keep Mr. Jim alive, as Cruel is going to be the last one to fall. There's going to be the ace for Brenchong, and maybe ASN holding out a bit too long. You can see as Adachi was picking, we need vision. Definitely the vision there on the side of Brenchong worked out so well. The one in the Tri-Bush up left of Kraken on the side of Brenchong's, for them, they had vision in there that the whole team of ASN, or at least Boy and Aeon, passed through, and they knew that team fight was coming. They were prepared for that. If per se ASN were able to get the jump on Brenchong, it might have been a different story. But especially moving into the late game, ending it out at 27 minutes 30, you know, it was looking like more of a Brenchong's game there. But I wonder if Rubber Monkey was able to spectate that one. If so, I'd like to bring Rubber Monkey in. If not, I guess
Hey,
we'll do
guys.
some analysts ourselves.
All right.
Don't worry, man. I'm here all the time, looking at great plays.
The
coming
Monkey,
out
were
from
you able
Brenchong.
to watch that?
Which one particularly?
Can't
Because there's a
tell.
lot of things.
Is he saying things?
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure both of us. I mean, all three of us should be watching